Writing 2 rooks. Everyone learns this one first. 2 rooks take turns trapping the enemy king, cutting the board smaller and smaller rank by rank. 1 rook gives check, the king is forced back, then the second rook steps in to remove another row of squares. Slowly, the king gets pushed all the way to the edge until there is nowhere left to run. It feels almost mechanical, like a machine closing in. As long as the rooks stay protected and coordinated, the checkmate is completely unavoidable. If you have never mastered this pattern, learn it now. It is the foundation of every serious endgame. Pawn and king. This looks simple, but it tricks almost everyone at first. 1 pawn and 1 king versus a lone king should be easy, right? Not always. The entire battle revolves around opposition. Most beginners instantly push the pawn forward, but that often throws away the win. Instead, the correct method is improving the king first, taking key squares and forcing the enemy king backward before advancing the pawn. Sometimes the difference between winning and drawing comes down to 1 tempo, 1 move made too early or too late. This endgame teaches one brutal lesson. In chess, precision matters more than material. Queen and king. A queen may be the strongest piece on the board, but even she cannot deliver checkmate alone. First, the queen cuts the enemy king off, taking away squares and slowly forcing it backward step by step. But the real work comes from the king. While the queen controls space, your king marches forward to support her and remove the final escape routes. The danger here is greed. Beginners often push the king too quickly into a corner and accidentally create stalemate. A winning position instantly becomes a draw. The trick is simple. Always leave the enemy king 1 square until your own king arrives. Then the queen finishes the job cleanly and effortlessly. Rook and king. This is where endgames stop being automatic. A rook alone cannot force the king backward forever. The king has to help. Your king walks toward the center, while the rook cuts off files and ranks, slowly shrinking the enemy king's space. The most important concept is opposition, placing your king directly in front of the opponent's king with 1 square in between. That single square decides everything. With opposition, the defending king is forced backward little by little until the rook seals off the final rank. Without it, the king escapes forever. Once you understand opposition, this checkmate suddenly feels logical instead of confusing. 2 bishops working together can completely dominate the board. 1 bishop controls the light squares, the other controls the dark squares, and together they slowly build a cage around the enemy king. The technique is about shrinking space. The bishops slice away diagonals while the king walks closer and closer, forcing the opponent toward a corner. Unlike bishop and knight checkmate, any corner works here, which makes the process much easier. Once the king is trapped, the bishops coordinate for the final blow. It takes patience, but compared to the endings higher on this list, it almost feels comfortable. Knight and bishop. This is the nightmare endgame. In theory, it is winning, but in practice, even grandmasters have failed to convert it. The bishop only controls 1 color of corner, meaning the enemy king must be driven into a very specific corner of the board. If it escapes to the wrong one, the entire process resets. The knight makes everything harder because it moves awkwardly and constantly needs precise repositioning. One famous technique is called the W maneuver, where the knight jumps in a strange pattern just to maintain control. Every move has to be exact. 1 mistake and the win disappears. If you can perform this checkmate consistently, your endgame technique is already far beyond most players. Queen versus rook. At first this seems obvious. A queen is stronger than a rook, so the win should be easy. It is not. This ending is incredibly stubborn. The defending rook keeps checking, hiding, and creating counterplay while the queen side tries to slowly tighten the net. The winning side has to coordinate checks carefully, forcing the king toward the edge without allowing perpetual harassment. Gradually, the rook runs out of safe squares, mating threats begin to appear, and eventually the rook is forced to sacrifice itself just to survive a little longer. 1 careless move can turn a clean win into a frustrating draw. This ending punishes impatience harder than almost any other. 2 knights versus pawn. This is chess at its most absurd. 2 knights alone cannot force checkmate against a king. The defending side can always escape at the last second or force stalemate. But strangely, adding a single pawn changes everything. That pawn gives the defender an extra move, a tempo, which removes the stalemate defense and suddenly makes checkmate theoretically possible. The attacking side has to blockade the pawn, trap the king in the correct corner, and create an unbelievably precise mating net. Then, at exactly the right moment, the pawn is allowed to move, giving the defending side 1 final final move, while the knights deliver mate before promotion happens. The margin for error is microscopic. Even elite players almost never convert this correctly over the board. It is one of the rarest and hardest wins in all of chess.